Hi everyone, this is Josie and welcome to Josie's Point of View, where we focus on human interest stories throughout the Carolinas. Today our focus is on veterans health care, and here's the story headline. And it reads, drunken VA pathologist who misdiagnosed 3,000 lab results is charged with three patients' deaths. This story is about alcohol abuse, cover-up, deception, poor work performance, and lack of administrative oversight. I expect that this story may evoke a variety of emotions, and some of them may not be positive. But grab your tissues, ladies and gentlemen, and have a seat. If you're veterans or you have veterans in your family, you just might want to hear this one. I generally try to keep my videos short, but let me apologize in advance because this session may go just a tiny bit longer. Now, this story was picked up by several news media, but I want to give credit to the writer from the Washington Post who was the first person who actually broke the story. She provided a very, very detailed report in the Washington Post, and her name is Lisa Wren. And even though many writers have built upon it and they have provided follow-up reports, but she's the one who deserves all of the credit. So the person we're talking about today is Dr. Robert Morris Levi. He's 53 and he's the former lead pathologist at the VA hospital in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and that's part of the Ozark. Last week, Dr. Levi was arrested and charged with 3 counts of manslaughter in the death of 3 veterans. VA officials are not saying that he not only misdiagnosed over 3,000 lab results, but he botched the diagnosis of 15 patients who later died and another 15 whose health was seriously harmed. But the problem with Dr. Levi began almost a decade ago, and his behavior was basically ignored by his superiors. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. When Dr. Levi came to work for the Veterans Administration about 12 years ago, he didn't exactly come with a clean slate. This Air Force veteran already had an arrest and conviction for DWI, for which he spent 3 days in jail and was placed on 3 years of probation. But the VA is not saying whether they knew about this conviction when he was hired. But he was named Chief of Pathology and Laboratory Service. According to people who knew him, he was pleasant, but he basically kept to himself. He would come to work around 5 a.m. and leave at 2 p.m., which is not unusual. He tended to work alone, and he worked when it was most convenient for him to get the job done. But I guess at some point he was doing his job well because he was elevated to positions of increased responsibility and was eventually supervising up to 100 people. No one ever questioned Dr. Levi's qualification for the job. In fact, he was highly qualified to hold the position of chief of pathology, but his behavior left others questioning his work performance. Around the time the new chief physician arrived at the hospital in 2012, he started getting complaints that Dr. Levi was showing up at the lab drunk. The complaints continued, and in 2015, one employee reported him to the supervisors that Dr. Levi was intoxicated. He appeared before a panel of hospital medical staff, and Dr. Levi denied the accusation, and no further action was taken. As part of the internal quality assurance program for the pathology department, Dr. Levi and his deputy were required each month to review a random sample of about 10% of each other's cases, and this is called peer review, and it's normal standard practice in the profession. But Dr. Levi's work always had a very small error rate and sometimes no error rate at all. But while the staff was complaining about his behavior, in view of this very low error rate, the Veterans Administration gave him a bonus. No one suspected at the time that anything fishy was taking place. In March of 2016, Dr. Levi was intoxicated when he was called to the radiology department to assist with a biopsy. A VA-ordered blood test showed his blood alcohol level was 0.4, which is 5 times the legal limit for driving in Arkansas. VA officials suspended Dr. Levi and reported his alcohol impairment to the state medical board. He then entered a 3-month inpatient treatment program. So he was given another opportunity to keep his job. So after his inpatient treatment, he returned to work, standing tall and agreeing to submit to random drug and alcohol testing. And for the next 42 blood and urine samples, they would turn up negative for drug and alcohol, according to court reports. His peer review, when his deputy would randomly check a sample of his work, as had been done previously, it showed up again 0% error rate. So based on these findings, the VA rewarded him once more by giving him another large bonus. But did he deserve it? And that's a very good question. You see, this bonus came within months after the death of a Vietnam era veteran. His name was Army Specialist Paul Robert Thomas Chick. Specialist Chick was 70 years old when he died of lung cancer, and investigators later discovered that Dr. Levi had missed his diagnosis 2 years earlier. When Specialist Chick was finally given the right diagnosis, the cancer had already metastasized or it had spread to other areas of his body, and he died 5 months later. According to his family, he died a horrible death which could have been prevented. So let's go back and review Dr. Levi's peer review data. As you recall, I mentioned that he was rewarded with two large bonuses because his peer review error rate was 0, which means he was not making any mistakes at all in his job. But that was not the truth. And according to the indictment, an 18-month review completed by a team of pathologists from the VA hospitals and also from medical school, they find that his rate of misdiagnosis was nearly 10%, which is more than 10 times the frequency of mistakes made by pathologists. And Dr. Levi was altering his deputy reviews to show them as occurring with his own, and that is what made his findings or his error rate look so favorable. But all he was doing was trying to cover up his mistakes. 2 months after Specialist Click died, Dr. Levi appeared drowsy and was incoherent when he arrived to chair an October 2017 tumor board meeting, and this information is documented in the minutes for the Hospital Professional Standards Board. He was sent home, and the hospital was forced to cancel multiple surgeries and medical procedures that required a pathologist to be present. But the hospital did not fire him, even though they had sufficient grounds to do so. He tested negative for illicit drugs and alcohol, and only thing the hospital did, they suspended his clinical privileges and assigned him to a non-clinical job. So really now he was getting paid for doing nothing. You have a pathologist getting over $220,000 a year, and he's really been assigned to a desk job. In January 2018, Dr. Levi's behavior still had not changed. Multiple staff members were still reporting that he was being impaired on duty. The Hospital Professional Standards Board kept him on suspension, and the chief hospital physician brought in an experienced pathologist who began to review his work. At that time, she found over a dozen misdiagnosed cases. And even though the lead physician, who was really the hospital chief of staff, even though he acknowledged in a January 11th memo that Dr. Levi's action had hurt patients, it was another 6 months before the Fayetteville, Arkansas Veterans Administration began to even take a deeper review of Dr. Levi's work. Imagine that. Now it's March of 2018, and the local police see Dr. Levi driving erratically in the post office parking lot, and he's arrested for driving under the influence. The police toxicology report detected a dangerous substance in Dr. Levi's blood called 2M2B. And you're saying, what in the world is 2M2B? Good question, because I'm about to tell you right now. Well, ladies and gentlemen, 2-methyl-2-butanol or 2-MTB is a colorless liquid that when taken in small amounts allow a person to achieve a state of intoxication within 30 minutes. And the high that you get tends to last a whole lot longer than when you're drinking alcohol. But here's the key, folks. It is untraceable in the blood and urine by routine testing method. And this is how Dr. Levi was able to complete those 42 blood and urine tests and come out clean. He was lying all along and he was playing them for a fool. He never stopped drinking. He was taking this substance that he had purchased on the internet, 2M2B, that allowed him to continue getting high and it could not be detected. And if it wasn't for this arrest and the police checking, he probably would have kept on drinking and working for the VA. A month later, the VA fired him, but they waited until June, which is an additional 2 months, before they even notified the medical boards that he could no longer practice medicine. And people have questions as to why they waited so long to do their job. And it was at that same month, June of 2018, that the VA finally went public with this matter. They acknowledged briefly that an incident had occurred and that a team was coming from Washington to review Dr. Levi's work for the past year. Eventually, the review was extended back to reviewing all of his work from 2005. There were town hall meetings and private meetings with veterans that followed. You can imagine there were a lot of angry people, especially when they were made aware that Dr. Levi's decision affected their medical diagnosis. The reviewer found there were like 3,000 cases that were misdiagnosed, but the reviewer found 30 serious cases of misdiagnosis. 15 of those people were already dead, and the remaining 15 were seriously harmed. Their cancer had spread to the point where there's no hope that they would ever recover. They would ever recover. There were instances of telling people they had cancer and they had undergone treatment where they never had cancer in the first place, and other cases where the patients did in fact have cancer, but they were given an opposite diagnosis, and as such, they were unable to get timely treatment. So local prosecutors have charged Dr. Levi with 3 cases of involuntary manslaughter in the deaths of 3 veterans. I'm sure there may be additional charges, but I can tell you with certainty that there's going to be a lot of lawsuits that are pending against Dr. Levi, against the VA hospital, against individuals in leadership responsibility who had oversight over Dr. Levi and were in a position to take action instead of allowing him to continue on and creating more harm to patients. So we're going to keep watching this case, and I'll keep you updated as the information becomes available. Well, this has been a very tough case to present. My heart goes out to every family that's affected. I sincerely pray that there's justice and that justice will come quickly. And that's all I have for you right now, folks. Leave me a comment below and let me know what you think about this story. And I'll be talking to you soon. Bye.